welcome back to another edition of the podcast. And I'm joined tonight by Sam Collyer to review the first 16 games of the National League season. It's certainly been an entertaining start to the season. We're just over a third of the way into the season now. Sam, first, I want to come to you. What's your thoughts been on the National League season as a whole?
Yeah, thank you for having me. National League this season's been mental. Very, very tight-knit league at the moment, albeit we're 16 games in at the moment. But yeah, I think when the likes of in the last few seasons, Notts County, Wrexham, Chesterfield, they've all kind of gone up. I think it was quite clear this season we would have a bit of a closer division and a few teams battling it out with no kind of clear runaway. So yeah, it's been a really entertaining season so far.
Just look at the top of the table, just looking at the top 7 at the moment. Of course, you've got York City currently sitting top on 35 points, followed by Forest Green in second place on 34. You've, of course, then got Barnet on 33, joint with Gateshead. And then Oldham, Rochdale and Yeovil make up the top 7. Now, I'm going to cap it there for the time being. But how do you see the top of the table this season compared to the previous year? What's your thoughts been on the top 7 so far?
See, so far at the moment with the top 7, I don't think there's quite a runaway group at the moment. Like you said, it's all very tight knit. But I do think a few of the ones that are in there already will be the ones that finish there.
Yes.
I think Barnet were always expected to be battling. I think York, maybe some people didn't expect them to be up this high, but I think they'd expected to be there. Gateshead. Come the start of the season, I thought most people again would think they'd probably be there, but as the season's gone on, losing Rob Elliott, I think they've done really well to retain that position in the division. Rochdale were a side I thought might struggle this season. Well, not struggle per se, but maybe not exceed or meet expectations. But yeah, they're playing some brilliant football, and I think at the moment it's really hard to put a finger on where anyone's going to finish.
Yeah, and I want to come back to get your actual predictions for the top of the table later on in the podcast. But if you just look at the moment, you look at York, Forest Green and Barnet, and actually Gateshead, all 4 of those sides are projected to get over 90 points this season. I think York are actually on track to hit the 100 mark. We talk about there being a title race, and it's something that I kind of want to ask you. Can you see there being a title race this season? I know you've kind of mentioned it earlier, or do you think there's going to be a side that will be able to pull away in the next few months?
I think it'll be a title race. The 3, I didn't actually mention them a second ago, but the 3 that stand out to me are Barnet, Forest Green, and York. I think they're 3 very well-equipped sides, all in different ways as well. I think Barnet, they got a really big squad filled with National League quality. Forest Green have gone for a smaller squad, but a bit more of an experience route, and York are very attacking. A bit of a mix between the 2 National League and EFL experience. Also with Hinchelwood kind of going for his go-to men that he had at Worthing as well. But yeah, they're all very different sides, I'd say. But I think they're the 3 that I kind of put in a title race if there was going to be one.
I'm actually going to put it down to 2 sides that I think will be in the title race. And I know a lot of people at the moment are kind of going for the top 3. I won't mention that for the time being, but there are 2 sides that I think will be in the title race, and I do think one of the top 3 at the moment will kind of fall away. Still be inside the playoffs, of course, but I don't think they'll be able to keep up with the other 2. Now, we're going to come back to that later on in the podcast. I want to look towards the bottom of the table for the time being, though. You look at the bottom 4, you've got Ebbsfleet, Boston, Wealdstone and Braintree. Now, of course, we're going to predict who's going to go down. I think for me personally, I look at Ebbsfleet at the moment and I think they're already gone. And it's quite sad to see, we're only 16 games into the season. They're actually averaging less than half a point a game, I should say. Ebbsfleet at the moment, they've only got 7 points in 16 games. They're actually projected to get 20 points this season. Can you see there being any change there for them to be able to put a case together to be able to survive this season?
Honestly, I agree. I don't see any change there. It would take a absolutely massive renovation of that club. Watling is in charge. That's a completely unknown package. God knows what will happen with him and if he'll manage to succeed. But I think in terms of the squad, I think you'd have to clear out 10, 11 players from that squad at least, and bring in another group to replace them, just to even stand a chance. And that's a really difficult task partway through a season. I think some of the additions they've made actually aren't too bad. The likes of Anthony Stewart and Todd Kane, even Pap Soiree coming in, which is a bit of a rogue left field signing. They all bring experience in the EFL, and I think they're kind of the signings that, as an Ebbsfleet fan, you'd want to see. But there's just something wrong at that club. It's just nothing's clicking. Nothing seems to be working for them whatsoever. So I personally, like you said, I don't see any way that they survive this season.
Yeah, I look at Ebbsfleet at the moment, and I think at the start of the season, I'm quite optimistic about them actually doing well. With keeping the manager from last season in Searle. Of course, he came in and I think kept them up in a way at the back end of last season. They pulled it out of the bag for them. And it just didn't go to plan in the first 10 or so games. And then, of course, they've kind of gone down a different route, sacked the manager, which I think it was clear they needed to do. Brought in a young manager, unexperienced, who's not managed in this league. And I think, for me, I looked at that time and was that the correct thing that Ebbsfleet needed at the time? Should they have gone down the route of getting an experienced manager who knows the division and knows how to keep a side up? And I don't think they've done that. I think they've tried to be a bit too clever with bringing Watling in. He's a young manager. I think at the start of the season, if you to appoint a manager, then potentially wait when he can bring in his own players. But to be 10 games in the season, I don't think it's a good time to be bringing in a manager like that. And I think it's clear they're trying to go for it. They're trying to do everything in their power to be able to bring in players that can keep them up. But I just feel I agree with you. Like I've said, I think the core of the squad is just so poor. I just can't see Ebbsfleet being able to get out of this situation at the moment. They're already 8 points adrift in the bottom four. And there's no one who's particularly standing out for me in that Ebbsfleet side at the moment. It's going to be able to pull it out of the bag for them. So for me, I look at sides that could potentially go down. And I think the one side that I'd be 100% have put a large bet on at the moment to finish bottom would be Ebbsfleet. If we're just talking about this kind of sides towards the bottom at the moment, then for you, how many sides could you potentially see being involved in this relegation scrap?
It's a tricky question, really. I think the four that are in the bottom four at the moment, obviously, I think it goes without saying they'll be in it. Maidenhead, given their status as a part-time team, I think it's always going to be a relegation scrap for them. They always seem to pull out the bag and pull through just about each season, but there's always some shaky moments for them. It pains me to admit it, but really at the moment, if Woking can't start firing up front, I think we could easily fall in there. We just can't seem to turn draws into wins at the moment, even despite performing well on the pitch. I forgot who else is. Hold on, I need to get
down there as well. Sat in 20.
Filed, Filed. That was it. You see, the filed for me. The one that I wanted to maybe touch on a bit later. About when it's in terms of relegation. For me, I think they could go down. It's a bit of an unknown because Phillips has come in. He's got time to work with the squad. Obviously Nick Horton as well. You've got a player of that quality, anything can happen. But Filed for me are a side that have really, really underperformed this season. I thought I had quite high expectations for them, and I just don't see that squad really. I don't see it clicking anytime soon as well. Obviously not on Ebbsfleet's standard, but I think they're a side that could be in trouble if Phillips can't find a way to get them firing.
I think there's going to be 8 sides involved in this relegation scrap at the moment. I've already said I think Ebbsfleet are going to be down, so that's one of the 8 who I believe will be down, and I think the other 7 are going to probably battle it out to try survive this season. I'll come on to that shortly, but something I wanted to kind of allude to were a few questions on sides that have kind of overachieved and underachieved so far. And I want to ask you, who's been the side for you that has kind of surprised you the most so far this season for you?
So we were talking about relegation scraps, and the side that shocked me is someone that I thought would be well and truly in a scrap, and that's Tamworth. Looking back, obviously hindsight's a beautiful thing, but I think looking back at it now, I think it may have been really harsh to undermine them, considering what they did last season, winning the league after winning back-to-back titles. Shows they've got grit in that team. And one thing I think sets them apart from other teams is they've got a clear image and they've got a clear style of play. They're not flashy about it. They play directs to a big target man up front. You know, they use that 3G pitch and long throws to an advantage. Obviously, we've just seen them beat Huddersfield in the FA Cup pretty spectacularly, to be fair. But yeah, they've got a really solid core of the team. The spine that side is you know, it's built to play that specific type of football, and I think, you know, it shows. They grind out results, and you know, they're exceeding probably anyone's expectations, really. I think most people expected them to be rock bottom, but to be 16th at the moment, and to be fair, at times they've been only a few points off playoffs. Yeah, they're a side that have really exceeded my expectations.
Yeah, I totally agree with your point there. I don't necessarily think Tamworth are the best squad in the world. I don't think you look at that squad and you look down and think there's a lot of quality in this squad. I think I'd still, at the start of the season, I can understand and that's why I actually put them bottom. Of course, I'm regretting it now because of what they've done, but I just think the manager has to take a lot of credit to set them up the way they have done. I think the squad, they've found a kind of, like you've mentioned there, an image and a style of football that's effective to be able to keep them in this division. And it's a bit like with Maidenhead, what we've seen over the last couple of seasons. I don't think anyone ever looked at that squad and think that's a particularly strong squad in this division, but what they do well is, as a squad, they work really hard. They're a very industrial side, which means they can pick results out when they need to, and that's something that I think Tamworth will be able to do this season, and I think they will be able to stay up. But when I was on about the sides that could potentially, you know, be in this like relegation scrap, I've actually put Tamworth in it, which might surprise a few. I just feel over the course of the season, them being part-time, I think they could kind of fall into the trap of being involved in the drops in this relegation scrap. I don't think they're going to drop down for 1 minute. I just feel that I look at the sides below them at the moment, and I could see Aldershot in 17th kind of shooting up a little bit. I think they'll be able to climb up. So the sides that I think will actually be involved in this relegation scrap are Tamworth, Woking, Maidenhead, Fylde, Braintree, Wealdstone and Boston and Ebbsfleet. Now, I'll predict who I think is going to go down as we progress further into the podcast. Of course, you'll give your predictions too. I think another side that deserve a lot of credit this season, who I still don't think they're getting the credit they deserve, is Yeovil as well. I think they've surprised me a little bit. I thought they'd be comfortable. I think most people predicted that they'd be fine in this division, but for them to sit 7th at the moment after 16 games, I think it's very, very impressive, particularly for a newly promoted side. You know, we've seen a lot of big clubs get promoted into this league in the last couple of seasons, and it's took time, hasn't it, for them to kind of adapt back into this division. And, you know, you include sides like York, who came into the division and struggled at first, but Yeovil have kind of taken everyone by surprise and have managed to really establish themselves in this division, haven't they?
Yeah, no, I think Yeovil have exceeded expectations. I think a lot of people maybe did expect mid-table for them. I do kind of still think that's where they'll finish up. But, you know, Mark Cooper, he's no slouch at this level. He knows what he wants. He's quite cutthroat. You know, you've seen the likes of Jordan Thomas loaned out to Salisbury, Dylan Morgan loaned out to Western-super-Mare. They're two players that were signed and, you know, went through pre-season. Well, Morgan was signed before, but, you know, went through pre-season with quite high expectations. Obviously, you just seen Jordan Young sold to Torquay as well. It shows that he's not afraid to make changes. They're similar to Tamworth, and one thing I forgot to mention with them is, you know, on paper the squad might not be super exceptional, but they work as a unit. They're not. It doesn't matter if they're individually maybe not as strong as other sides. And, you know, Yeovil they do have a fairly strong side, but, you know, a top 7 team, I don't really think so. And so to be up there at the moment is pretty impressive. I like Jarvis up front. He's an outlet. You know, at this level, you know, he can score goals. McGuckin's gone now, but he looks a real asset at times, and I think that's when they were looking at their best, when they both played up front together. Yeah, with Yeovil, I think they're a well-drilled team who build off of a strong defence. You know, I think they'll be, like you said, more than fine. I think most people expect them to be fine, but I think they have really started the season in a really strong way.
Yeah, I think the question for them is going to be whether they can kind of keep where they're up at the moment, if they can stay in the top half, stay in the playoffs as such at the moment. I think for me personally, no. I think they're a side for me that I could see slipping down into mid-table. I just feel quality going forward, I think, is going to let them down at times. And I think you look at their squad compared to some of the others around them in the league, and I think you'd have to say on paper they're a lot stronger. But it's the National League, and anything, of course, can happen in this division, and they may finish inside the playoffs. But for me personally, I can't see it. Another question then is quite negative, this one. Who has been the most underwhelming side for you so far this season? I know there's always quite a few. There's two in particular for me so far, and I think you'll probably say one of them.
Yeah, so one of the when you first asked me the question before we started recording, I thought to myself, I'm gonna just, when you say the word underwhelming, I'm just gonna go with this first team that comes to my mind, and that was Hartlepool. Darren Sarll's obviously been let go, still managerless, but Sarll's always had success in his first season at this level. Playoffs with Woking, playoffs with Yeovil, and that squad he built was playoff quality. Desaru way up front. The experience in the likes of Parks and Waterfall at the back with some really, really good National League quality players, but the way that they played, the style, too direct. So whatever happened there, it just didn't click. It's not gone to plan. Sometimes that does happen at this level. You get a really good squad, and it just doesn't click for whatever reason. I think the style of play was a bit forced from Darren Sarll. I think he wanted to try and play this high press with players that didn't really fit that system. But for me, that on paper, that's a side that should be playing around the playoff places, that could be really competing. But at the moment, they are a team that are closer to relegation in the playoffs. And, a new manager could very easily change that because he's got quite a strong squad to work with. But for me, Hartlepool are the ones that are kind of failing to meet the expectations by the furthest distance of the league at the moment.
Fair enough. They were the side that I actually said, and you've kind of nailed it on the head, everything that I was going to say about Hartlepool there. I think it's pretty obvious. You look at the squad on paper for me, I still feel they're capable of getting the playoffs, and I probably shouldn't. But, you look at them in the last 4 games, I think the only positive for them is since Sarll left the club, they've kind of improved slightly. They got a point against Maidenhead, point against Altrincham, and beat Sutton, and of course have recently beaten Aldershot in the league as well. Of course, the next game for them is York City when we're back in league action next Saturday, so that'll be an interesting one for York City, of course. So it's going to be interesting because I feel if Hartlepool appoint the right man there, who suits the players that they've got, I genuinely feel Hartlepool could put a bit of a late case together to maybe push for the playoffs. I know it's going to be a bit of an uphill battle for them now, but I still genuinely feel that there's enough quality in this squad to put a bit of a run together. You've mentioned it there, Desaru, 23 goals last season. He's already scored 7 this season. They've brought in Gary Medine, who's got that experience, can clearly score goals. Mancini, one of the players who was injured for the majority of last season, but we all know what he's capable of doing. Adam Campbell coming back to the club. Actually dropping back into the division, I should say. For me, overall, I look at Hartlepool and I think there's a very good side there that could put a bit of a case together to significantly improve on the position that they're at the moment. But the other side, you could potentially say, is Southend United, sitting 14th in the league. Finished just outside of the playoffs last season. If it wasn't for the minus 10 points deduction, they would have finished inside the playoffs. I think most people probably expected them, now the takeover's over, I think they've added to the squad a little bit, thought, well, surely they should finish inside the playoffs this season and improve. I think I had them 5th, at the start of the season. But it's not as always easy as it looks on paper, I think. When you have a takeover like that, I think a lot of issues are still there off the field that they're still trying to rectify. And for me, I know a lot of Southend fans have got on the players' backs. I think for me, overall, you look at their position at the moment, and it's probably not the best on paper, but you still have to say they're only 4 points off the playoffs at the moment. And you look at the additions that they've made recently, and they've certainly improved the squad. Moncure's come in, Peppel's come in as well. For me, overall, I look at Southend, and I think a lot of people would say that they've kind of been a bit underwhelming so far this season. But, unbeaten in 3 now, 2 wins in the last 3 as well against quite strong sides in, beating Rochdale and Tamworth as well. For me, Southend, another side that I could see climbing up the league. I don't think they're good enough for the playoffs this season. I think next season's probably when we'll see them become really strong. But for me, I think Southend are a side that will improve as well. Also, I think the final question I was going to ask you on kind of these many questions that I want to discuss. I want to ask about the side that you're the most unsure about this season, the side that you don't really know where they're at, if that makes sense. I think everyone's probably got a few sides, a lot of sides that are inconsistent in this division. But is anyone for you where you kind of may want to put them in the playoffs, you may want to put them to drop down, but you don't know at the same time?
Yeah, so I've mentioned it a few times on Twitter. There's two sides in the division this season that I think I just think are absolutely almost bipolar. One side a little bit less at the moment. They seem to have kind of found their rhythm, which is Altrincham. But the side for me that I really think are just I have no clue is Dagenham. I can't seem to figure out where they're going to finish this season. They've got a really strong squad on paper, but I think it was highlighted quite early in the season or in pre-season that all that quality in the squad is always a bit of a gamble because there's a few very injury-prone players in there, the likes of Callum Bailly, Grego Cox, Junior Marias. They're all very good players at this level, but their injury records are always, it's a looming shadow over the team. They seem to win when they do win. They seem to win with conviction. Beating Gateshead 7-1 is something special, really. I can't remember who they beat 4-0, but they beat someone quite comfortably. Filed it was, yeah. They went and absolutely smashed Filed. But they seem to win with conviction when they do win. But there seems to be games. I think Woking, when they came to us, they looked a good side. They knocked the ball around well, but they just seemed to lack something in the team. And we went and grabbed the 3 points towards the end of the game. But that's the thing. I feel like you just don't really know what side you're going to get on the day with Dagenham. Like I said, the quality they got in that team. Dion Pereira stands out to me as someone he's technically superb. He's got goals, he's got assists. He can beat a man. I think he may have tailed off a little bit in recent weeks, but the quality's always still there, and he's going to be a key player. Same goes to Ryan Hill on the other side. He's a player I've always quite rated. Whenever he played for Eastleigh, I always thought he stood out to me as quite a handful to deal with the defenders. But yeah, for me, Dagenham, I think I wouldn't quite say they're in a false position, but they could very, very much easily, or very, very easily be higher up in that league at the moment.
Yeah, I'd certainly agree. I think they were the two sides as well that I were looking at. I think another two sides you could put into the equation and kind of discuss maybe potentially would be Eastleigh and Sutton as well. I know Sutton started very strong and then have significantly kind of gone downhill. And I think most people now be thinking they're going to finish in mid-table come the end of the season. And I think first season back in the National League, I don't think that'd be the biggest disappointment. I know there'll be certain Sutton fans that will come on here and probably say, well, no, we should be one of the bigger clubs in this division after just being relegated. We should be up there. But I think we can both agree the amount of clubs that we've seen have slipped through the net in this division when they've come down in the last couple of seasons. I don't think mid-table will be a particularly bad position for Sutton. Eastleigh as well, I don't really know what to think of them. Last season, they were certainly a side that I think a lot of people expected to do a lot better than what they did when you look at the quality on paper, a bit like what Hartlepool are this season. And I think a lot of people this season kind of expect them to be higher. I think people had mixed opinions about them at the start of the season. There were rumours about McCallum leaving. He's staying now. Shades come in and play who were quality for Solihull last season and certainly been good for Eastleigh. I think defensively there's a lot of questions, isn't there, at Eastleigh? So for me, they're another club you could discuss, but I think the main one would be Altrincham. For me, they sit ninth in the league at the moment. And it feels like a bit of a false position in a way when you look at them. I think for me, I look at them and I think goals. It feels like they've struggled this season. But what interests me is the fact that I go on about them struggling for goals with losing Chris Clark. Yet they go and put 5 past Filed away from home. I must add as well. So you just really don't know what to think of Altrincham at all. They could easily put a case together to push for the playoffs, but at the end of the season we could see them down in 16th. It's really hard to tell with them at the moment. So yeah, they're probably the other club that I'd probably think of to think of a side that I don't really know what to expect from them this season. But think something else I wanted to come on to, we'll probably go back towards the bottom sides that could potentially drop down. Now, I've got 8 sides that I think will be involved in this relegation battle come the end of the season. I think you had 7 or 8, something like that. Did you feel that it'd be down there? Could you see Tamworth slipping into it, or do you think they'll have too much?
Yeah, so I do think Tamworth will be in a relegation scrap. I think that's kind of expected, even if they do exceed expectations as a part-time team. Lowest budget in the league by a mile as well. You know, anything other than relegation should be a success for them, really, I think. Yeah, so for me, the bottom 4, Ebbsfleet, Boston, Wilson, Braintree, I think they're all in that scrap. Fylde as well, Tamworth. Maidenhead will always be in that, and you know, Woking too. I think, you know, it's a bit uncertain with us at the moment what's going to happen with finances and the money at the club. But I think at this point in the season, we just got to try and steady the ship. And you know, I do think it is possible we get dragged into that relegation scrap. I do think Aldershot could be a side that may get dragged into it if they don't make a change, whether that's tactically or managerially. I think they need to make some sort of change because, you know, I tweeted something about it the other week. You could put anyone in that back line at Aldershot, and I don't think it solves their problem. You know, I think it's all system problems. I think last season they had the goals to kind of pave the cracks of it with Stokes, Tolaj. You know, Barham was in better form, but you know they play such a high line. They're basically playing with a whole 11 in a final third at times. You know, it's no, you can have as fast a player as you want in that back line. You're always going to get hit on the break and you're going to struggle. And I think there's a little bit of stubbornness at times from Widrington in terms of, you know, tweaking the system. But for me, they're a side that could definitely get dragged into it as well if they don't see some sort of change one way or another.
They concede an awful amount of goals, and you mentioned that about you could put any back four, and it's something that I totally agree with. And I think the issue is this season is they don't have the forward line that they did have last season, and that's shown with the amount of goals that they've scored. I think if you're going to play that way, you've got to score goals, and I think you are kind of guaranteed to score goals, but you have to score a significant amount, and that's something that I don't think, you know, Aldershot are doing at the moment. They've scored 21 goals in 16 games, which isn't particularly too bad at all. But when you're conceding a lot of goals, you need to be scoring more. 25 goals conceded so far. And for me, I think they'll be fine. I'd like to think Aldershot will be fine. I think there's enough quality in that squad and experience to be able to not be involved in this relegation scrap at the moment. So I'm going to hit you with the question, the 4 sides for you then at this moment in time that you think could go down.
So my bottom 4 are Ebbsfleet in 24th, Boston in 23rd, Braintree in 22nd, and Fylde in 21st. Ebbsfleet, I think, are that's a given. I mean, I can see them not coming out of, or not rising up the table at all this season anymore. I mean, I think it'd be a task to move up to 23rd for them at the moment, let alone survive. Boston, just so much uncertainty at the moment. No manager, no coaches, no staff. They all seem to have walked out. You know, a squad that I do feel have gaps in them. I think they were missing some experience at the back, or National League experience. I think they need a bit more of, you know, it was always going to be hard to replace Knowles and Mooney, but you know, I do think they need a bit more conviction up front. You know, at one point in the season, they had the 3rd highest XG in the league, yet had scored like the 16th or 17th most goals. You know, it just wasn't clicking for them up front. Braintree, that's a side that I just think, you know, I had high expectations for Braintree this season after seeing the summer they had. I quite rate Angelo Harrop as a manager too. He's gritty. He knows how to win matches and grind out results. But, you know, I think, again, there's gaps in that squad. I think they've needed a natural right back for the whole season, and that just seems to not even remotely be addressed. Recent signings as well, like Rio Davidson Phipps and, you know, Connor Kelly, that screams to me like they may have, you know, overspent a little bit in the summer and maybe lack a bit of funding to try and rectify it now. I think, you know, Harrop, anything can happen with Braintree because, you know, Harrop's so good in the market. Last season, they utilised that loan market so well. But, for me at the moment, I can see them going down because they just can't turn them draws into wins, and they can't turn them losses into draws. They struggle in front of goal, and that's a problem for them at the moment.
Any close? Oh, sorry, carry on. Sorry.
Oh no, go on. Sorry.
I was just going to ask any close shades for you towards the bottom who you think might survive by 1 or 2 points, or do you think the bottom 4 will be kind of well adrift in the year?
I think Wildstone might just about survive. But and to be fair, if you asked me a week or two ago who would be down, I would have said Wildstone without a doubt. But I think Sam Ashford returning from injury, Shauna Darkwa has been almost forgotten about, but he's a goal scorer at this level. And then obviously Alex Reid is an absolutely exceptional signing for this level. I think they're going to have the goals now to stay up. I think the attacking options they've got will trouble any team at this level. So yeah, I think it's I think they'll just about survive. But if you asked me 2 weeks ago, that's just the National League really. You could ask one question one weekend, and then the same question the next weekend. You could have a total different answer. So it's a bit of a potluck really.
Yeah, well, I remember that before that, prior to that Braintree game, I was discussing with Paul, my co-host. He was saying he actually came on and said that this match is going to define our season. I think if we lose that match, then we're probably going to go down. But they managed to come away from that with 3 points against Braintree, which is a massive 6-pointer. Then going to Ebbsfleet, I think they'll be disappointed not to have taken 3 points there. But to get a point away, I don't think it's the end of the world for them. And, you look at them now, with the fixtures coming up, they're clearly going to score goals. They've just beaten Grimsby in the FA Cup. For me, I think Wheelstone could potentially be fine, which will bring me on to the sides that I feel will go down this season. So I think it's a given. I think everyone's predicting Ebbsfleet to finish bottom, 8 points adrift. Like I've mentioned, they're projected to get 20 points this season. You're not going to stay up with 20 points. 23rd, I'm actually going to stick with Boston as well. You've mentioned there about the lack of goals going forward with the players that they lost in the summer. For me, I just look at them and I just think another side that's not good enough at home either. I don't think they've actually won a game at home so far this season. And, if you're down there, you need to be winning your home games. And for me, overall, I look at Boston, I just think that they're going to be too poor to be able to survive. And then it kind of got a little bit more difficult for me with the bottom 2, who I thought were going to go down. 22nd, I've actually gone for Fylde. And they were a side for me at the start of the season I had quite high expectations for. I think they're the side that I actually overestimated the most at the start of the season. I actually predicted them to finish just outside of the playoffs, and I thought they genuinely would do that. After that opening day win against Solihull, I thought, Fylde could be onto something this season. But they're too reliant on one man in Nick Horton. He scored 11 of the 20 goals this season, and we've spoke about Aldershot. The way they play, they need to be scoring a lot of goals if they want to play that way, because they're guaranteed to concede goals. And it's quite similar with Fylde as well. 36 goals conceded so far this season. Only Ebbsfleet have conceded the same amount as them. So they've got the joint worst defence in the division at the moment. And to have only scored 20 goals when one man scored 11 of them, I feel that Fylde are in quite a lot of danger this season. Kevin Phillips coming in, it kind of interests me, this one, because he's a player that I think will suit that style. But is that style necessarily what Fylde need? For me personally, no. So I could see Fylde dropping back down to the National League North, which I think, considering where Fylde were a number of years ago, where they were pushing to try get into the Football League, to see them now, coming back into the National League, a lot of people expected them after a couple of seasons to be able to push on and get back to putting a bit of a case together to get back in the EFL. But last season they narrowly avoided the drop zone, and this season it's not looking good for them at the moment, being 2 points above the drop zone. And then in 21st place, I do apologise, Sam, but I've actually gone for Woking. You just look at all the issues off the field at the moment. For me, I just can't see it ending well for Woking at the moment. 18th in the league. It feels like every week they're slipping further and further down towards the drop zone, and I think that's something that at the end of the season is going to come back to bite them with the financial issues. I could see Woking dropping down. Narrowly surviving. I've actually got Wheelstone. Like you've mentioned there, Reid coming in. Alex Reid from Oldham has been a significant signing for them so far. I think he scored 6 goals, hasn't he, in 5 games? Something like that. Of course, scoring that goal in the FA Cup. And that's something I feel Wealdstone have needed in the last couple of weeks, is a natural goal scorer. I think that they can create the chances. They just haven't been taking them. And I think they've found probably one of the best strikers in this division that I don't think got the credit he deserved in a way at Oldham. I just think because of the amount of strikers that Oldham, of course, have got and the quality going forward, he didn't particularly get a sniff. Where I feel, a lot of clubs in this division, including my side, Halifax, would benefit from someone like Alex Reid significantly. So I genuinely think Wealdstone will be able to survive now. And then Braintree, I think they're a side for me at the start of the season I thought would be fine with the amount of players that they brought in. And I still feel like they will be, because if you look at them defensively, they're not too bad. 19 goals conceded, which is a lot less than the sides around them. I think going forward's been where they've struggled, and that's quite surprising when you consider some of the players that they've got there in Effingham and Akinde as well. I just feel it's only a matter of time before they start scoring, and I think Braintree will be fine this season and will be able to survive. So that's the sides that we've got to go down. Would you mind just repeating it again? The 4 sides that you think will go down, and then I'll do it.
So I've got Ebbsfleet, Boston, Braintree, and Fylde.
I've got then Ebbsfleet, Boston, Woking. Oh, I've got Ebbsfleet, Boston, Fylde, and Woking. So I do apologise to you, Sam, for that one. We'll look towards the top of the table now, the sides that could potentially finish inside the playoffs this season. So I've previously mentioned the 7 sides who are inside the playoffs. Just outside of the playoffs so far, you've got Solihull, Altrincham, Halifax, and Eastleigh, who are just a point off the playoffs at the moment. 2 points off the playoffs. Solihull, of course, are a point off the playoffs. Any sides for you in that top 7 at the moment that you could see slipping out and being replaced come the end of the season? For me, I think the top 6 are sorted. I just feel like that 7th place is going to be where we could see a change.
Yeah, so I mean, you mentioned Altrincham, Solihull, and Eastleigh. I think that's 3 very, very different contrasting teams. Altrincham kind of just floating about. They don't really look threatening to the playoffs. They're kind of just, picking up a result here and there. Not really, like you said, you don't really know what you're going to expect with them. There's no real conviction about that side. Colin Clark left in the summer, and no one really thought he'd be replaced. But I thought a player of a similar play style would be brought in, and they didn't. Goals were tricky to come by at the start of the season. Maybe coming to their own a bit now, but I don't think they're really someone who threaten it at the moment. Eastleigh, a side I think are on their way down. I think they're a bit of a purple patch at the start of the season, and I think now they're kind of. I don't know how many games it's been since they've won a match, but it's been a good while. It's not quite working for them at the moment. Tyree Shade is a top player. Obviously the likes of Paul McCallum, but something just isn't quite clicking for them. And Solihull, I think that's a team on the up now. They had a few injury troubles at the start of the season. People like Tavon Campbell is still out injured. He's a crucial player to their side. He brings all the goals. But they're a team I can see that kind of just climb that table slowly and progressively across the rest of the season now. I was a bit shocked by their start, really. I thought they'd be right up there this season. They're a side I thought might have been in the title race. But like I said, injuries had something else to say about that. But now I think they're a side that could really test that playoff spot. I think, like you said, the 7th place is, Yeovil. I don't think that's a side that most people really think will be in that playoffs or even in contention for it come the end of the season. But we've seen stranger things at this level. So, it's early days, really hard to predict. But for me at the moment, I'd say Solihull probably the one that are kind of itching around that spot and, look like they're the best prepared to kind of make that playoff charge in that kind of lower tier zone of that playoffs.
Yeah, I'd 100% agree. I think the top 6 for me are a lot better than the other sides we've mentioned, apart from Solihull. Now, their side for me, you've mentioned there, I think could put a case together to finish inside the playoffs quite comfortably. There's a lot of quality in that squad. You've mentioned there they had quite a difficult start to the season. I don't think injuries has helped them one bit. You look at the likes of John Bostock in the midfield, Jack Stevens, a lot of players who've come in, I believe, as well. And that takes time for players to kind of adjust. And I think that's something that Solihull have started to do now, and they're kind of putting a bit of a mini run together at the moment. And I think Solihull will be able to finish inside the playoffs come the end of the season. I think Halifax, for me, the difference between us finishing the playoffs last season and this season is the fact that last season, games like against York City, we would have got something out of that game. Being 1-0 up, we would have been able to hold out and not concede 2 quite poor goals like them. And the same with Rochdale as well. I think for me, although we are quite good defensively, which is something that you have to be if you want to play the way that Halifax do, because we're not going to score enough. Halifax don't score enough goals, so they rely on their defence very heavily and grinding out results. And that's something that last season they did very well and managed to finish just inside of the playoffs. Whereas this season, although they're still doing that to a certain extent, losing to York, losing to Rochdale, for me, in games where they should be picking results out, they can't afford to do that if they want to finish inside the playoffs this season. So for me, I can't see Halifax finishing inside the playoffs, unfortunately, with myself being a Halifax fan. But the side for me, like I've mentioned, that I think will finish inside the playoffs and will overtake Yeovil, Solihull Moors. A lot of quality in that side. I think they're a side for me that may finish higher than 7th. I think they're the only side capable of doing that. There's a lot of quality in that side, a lot of goals. And I think defensively they've been quite poor so far this season, but I think they'll improve over time. So yeah, for me, I think Solihull will finish inside that top 7. As for Rochdale and Oldham, do you see them moving at all in the season, up or down? I know you've mentioned about the top 6. You think will stay the same? Can you see them?
Yeah. So Rochdale, again, they're a side that I kind of maybe underestimated at the start of the season.
Mm-hmm.
I'm honestly surprised at how torn their fan base is at times this season.
Yeah.
I think they play some brilliant football. They've got some brilliant players. They're even adding strength to their squad as as the season goes on. Dennis coming in from MK Dons on loan. I think that's a superb addition. I've banged on about Woking, trying to wanting Woking to sign him for a long time. They've got a really good squad, and like I said, one thing that separates teams in this league is a style of play, and having a way that you go out from minute 1 in a game and look to outclass a team in playing that style. And I think Rochdale have that. They like to get the wing backs up high. The left and right centre back in their back three, they like to push them up high as well, support them. They support one man up front with almost 2 10s, one almost kind of playing off of them. It's very clear the way that they're trying to play, and I think that kind of benefits them down the line. Whereas with Oldham, I'm impressed with Oldham as well. I think they've got a way of playing. They're a bit grittier rather than easy on the eye, but they've got some really good players. Manny Mumph is superb. I think it still shocks me to this day really how he's playing National League football. Next week, Mickey Mellon's hinted towards maybe some additions. There's been the saga of Josh Stones for a long time now. God knows what's going to happen with that. But it's crazy to say, and it might not get the best reception. But with Oldham, for me, I think there's an implosion there. I think one slip up, most teams would be like, what, we've slipped up, we'll move on.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they've got a very vocal fan base, Oldham. I think the fans they show a lot of passion, and I think that works both ways. If something slips up, I can see the fans, getting a bit restless, and it's difficult to say with Oldham because the way that they're going now, you could well and truly see them flying up the table. But yeah. I just think that every team slips up at some point, and I think I can see their slip up having a bit more of a knock-on effect to their season than other teams would.
The form they're on at the moment, they'll be joining the 3 sides that are currently in the title race, the way they're playing. But you mentioned there about if they do have a slip up, and I know they have done a few times this season when they've had the 2 defeats, they've managed to bounce back straight after that. But if they start losing 1 or 2 games, when Barnet did that, they managed to get back to winning ways when they had to play a Rochdale side. For me, would Oldham do that? If they start going on a bit of a bad run, and that was something that I think Oldham fans will be hoping, well, we probably won't go on a bad run until the end of the season now. I think they've kind of had a bit of a patch, didn't they, where I think they didn't win in 6 or 7 games, drew a lot of games in that time as well. For me, like I said with Oldham, they're very good at grinding out results against the better teams. If they're playing a side that's up there, I'd probably back them to win. But when they're playing against, the sides lower down, like your Tamworths, your Braintrees, your Wheelstones, although this season, to be fair to them, they've picked up results in those games and actually won them, they seem to struggle a lot in those games. You know, I think we've seen against Ebbsfleet, they won, I think 2-1 in that game. It was another game where it were quite tight as well, and Oldham probably came away from that. And that's something that Oldham are good at, grinding results out. But for me, overall, you know, you look at Oldham, and that's somewhere where they could potentially slip up. At the moment, they're not doing that. For me, I want to ask you, what do you believe stopping them from being able to push for the title this season, or could you see them potentially joining the title race?
See, that's a really, really tricky question. You know, you touched on, you know, they had a little spell where they, you know, they didn't win a game in 6, but I look at that spell and I think that's quite telling of how far they've come under Mellon so far, because, you know, that was 6 games where they didn't win, but that was also, I believe it was 6 draws. I think, you know, they're a team that are very, very hard to beat. You know, they make it so, you know, even if they're having an off day, you know, it's still no walk in the park for the opposition to go and pick up 3 points against them. You know, the likes of Klukas come in. That's, you know, again, just like Manny Month, you know, he has no right to be playing at this level, really. He's just a step above in terms of quality. For me, I don't really know. I don't really know with Oldham. There's just something about it that I just can't put my finger on. I just don't think they have that in them to kind of push that next step in the division. You know, and I do think it might be to do with, you know, once they hit that little bit of adversity, you know, I do see them maybe as a team who might crumble a little bit and, you know, find it a bit harder to kick back onto form. But that's often the case with a lot of sides who rarely lose. You know, you'll see a few losses in clusters because, you know, it comes as a bit of a shock to the system, really, and, you know, they don't quite know how to respond when they barely have to respond. So yeah, I don't think they quite have it in them to push into that title race. But it's also one of the ones where if they were to, I probably wouldn't be too surprised.
We look at fourth then at Gateshead at the moment. We're top of the table for the first 6 or 7 games, I believe, this season. Actually beat Barnet as well when Barnet came to Gateshead's ground. I think manager leaving, 1 or 2 bad results, losing to Forest Green, losing to Dagenham as well. And then, like I've mentioned, the manager then leaving. It always does feel like when something, which has happened quite regular with Gates, and it feels like they're going to drop off, but they always seem to bounce back and manage to hold their own, and that's something they have done. They're still 4th in the table at the moment, you know, unbeaten in the last 3 now. 2 wins as well in those time, beating Sutton away and then beating Solihull as well, a side as well who I think we both believe will do well this season. Could you still see them being involved in the title race, or do you think it's too much of an ask? For me personally, no. I think with everything that's happened, although it's early and I think they've dealt with that well, I think maybe the lack of depth, maybe. I genuinely feel there's sides that are better than them when it comes down to when Gateshead start to get injuries, for me personally.
Yeah, so for me, since, you know, it was always going to rock the boat with Elliott leaving. You know, they really come into their stride of him, playing some really good football. With Magnay coming in, it's, again, I think it was the obvious appointment to make, you know, someone who knows the club inside out, similarly to, you know, Elliott when he did arrive. There's something not quite the same under Elliott and, you know, what there was under Williamson at the moment. And I think
like they were doing.
No, exactly. They're grinding out results, you know, 2-1-0 wins, you know, against, you know, Solihull, a good side, and you know, Sutton, they're a physical team, you know, they'll look to bully you. It'll always be a tough game, but you know, 1-0 wins. It's not wins of conviction that they kind of had under Elliott. You know, I think he's really left the club at a bad time when they're probably at a stage in their project where they could be looking to finally go up. But for me, Gateshead are the kind of team where I kind of think now, you know, I can see them, you know, taking a while to click again under Magnay fully. But I still think they'll hang on to a playoff spot. I agree. I don't think they'll be in a title race. But yeah, for me, I think I've got them quite low down in the playoff spots, maybe only just making it. But you know, I think they've done enough so far, and I think they've got a strong enough squad in terms of individuals. You know, likes of Owen Asani has goals in him. I think they've got a very, very well structured back line. I think you know, the likes of Tinkler, Richardson, Tien and Brooks, I think, was a great signing. Suits them down to a T. But yeah, I think they've got it in them to get playoffs, and I'd be very shocked if they didn't. But all in all, I think I think Gateshead fans will probably be thinking the same. I don't think they're really thinking about a title charge now, since Elliott's left. But yeah, I think they should still probably expect playoffs.
Top three then at the moment, you've got York City who are top, Forest Green who are second, and Barnet who are third. 35 for York, 34 for Forest Green, and 33 points for Barnet. Do you think all three of those sides will be involved in the the title race then? And if you will, what order would you put them in? And just kind of state why you put them in that order.
Yeah, so it's early doors, obviously, but as it stands, I think I can't really see any other team coming into that title race, and I can't see any of the three dropping out of that title race either. I've gone in the order of York, Barnet, Forest Green. York, to me, they're just, there's not a bad thing I can say about them at the moment. They've got a really attacking manager who's signed players to play a specific way of really high quality. And it's free flowing football, and they're winning. Like I said, I've used the word conviction quite a lot this podcast, but I think when you see a team winning games with conviction, I think it says a lot and about how comfortable they are in the way that they play. And York are doing that. They don't look. They look, again, hard to beat, but they look so good on the ball, and they dominate a game from minute one. I've said for a while now, I think Neil Ardley he's a good manager, but he leans towards the defensive style of tactics, and I don't think that suited that York team whatsoever when they had the likes of Akinyemi in the side last season, and it kind of nullified them. It steadied the ship, and it took them out of trouble. But Hinshelwood's got the best out of some of the attacking talent they've got, and I don't think there's a side in this division that have worse, or have any better attacking options than them. Barnet for me in second. It's quite. I think most people want them to win the league. Their summer recruitment was really good. A lot of new names coming in, but I think the biggest bit of transfer business for them was bringing in Hartigan on a permanent deal. I think he absolutely runs that midfield for them. They've got options all around the park, and I think their squad depth will come. It'll come in clutch this season. I think it'll help them when times are tough. They've lost a few games recently, and they a bit of heartbreak against Exeter in the cup, but again against the League One side, I think it's a bit of a free hit. But they don't draw games. Barnet, they go and win games. Dean Brennan, I think he's up there with one of the best managers in this league. The likes of Kabamba, they've got goals in him. They've got creativity in the likes of Brunt and Chapman. I think it's a side that has it all. But as we mentioned on the live podcast the other week, it's whether they can turn up in them big games, and that's something that really needs to be answered. But I think this is a season where they really could kick on. And Forest Green in third for me. One thing that does worry me about Forest Green, and wouldn't maybe not see them trail off as such, is the size of their squad. Ryan Innes was sent off the other day against Woking. After that, they've got Tozer, Jordan Moore-Taylor, and no other centre-backs in the club. They've got a fair bit of depth in the midfield areas, but also they lack a lot of depth out wide, a lot of depth in defence as well. Obviously the loan market's always there to be utilised, but the squad depth is so important at this level with so many games you have to play. I think that could come back to bite them, but I think they've definitely broken that curse this season of newly relegated sides struggling. I think they've got the formula right. They've got a good manager in Steve Cotterill. The likes of Liam Sercombe coming in, I think it shows a lot of experience in the side. That that's the kind of player that can see you through a game. Same with Ben Tozer, but yeah, I can see them maybe finishing third, which might come as a bit of a shock to suggest that, because I think at the moment they look almost almost impossible to beat. They came to Woking, played with 10 men for about 70 minutes, and didn't really look like losing. I think that's quite telling about what they are like as a team. But for me, I think, you look at the squads on paper, and I think Forest Green maybe just lack a bit of depth when it comes to the latter stages of the season. But obviously, that's something that can change.
I think, with Forest Green, what will be interesting is that they're another side that have actually only had 2 defeats all season. It'll be interesting to see maybe if they lose 1 or 2 games, how they bounce back from that. We saw with Barnet, something to be fair to them, when they've lost 1 or 2 games, they managed to bounce back against quite good teams as well. York, the same. They've only had 1 defeat all season. They haven't actually lost away. When they do eventually lose again, which I'm sure they will do at some point, be interesting to see how they can bounce back as well. But for me, though, looking at the top 3, I've actually got Barnet in 3rd place, and I don't actually think they'll be involved in the title race as such, where it's coming down to the final few games. I don't necessarily think the top 2 will do what Wrexham and Notts County did. I don't think that'll ever happen again, but I think that these 2 will be, the 2 above will be able to kind of push away from Barnet, I should say. And the reason I say that is you look at Barnet at home and they're very, very strong. I think they've got maximum points at home so far this season. But you look at them away and it's not good. It's not good for a side that's involved in the title race. 13th in the league on away form. They've actually lost more matches away than what they've actually won. And that's for a side that's involved in the title race. You also look at them overall and you look, 16 games gone. They've lost 5 games in those 16. So for a side that's involved in the title race, you come to the end of the season, you're going to have been losing, probably going to have lost probably about 14, 15 games come the end of the season. If you ban it, and for a side that's wanting to win the title, for me, I just genuinely can't see them doing that. So I think Barnet will be in the playoffs, but I just feel that they're not going to be involved in the title race, which may surprise a few. I think a lot of people have still got them to win the title. You also look at Barnet in some of the big games, like you mentioned there, over the last couple of seasons and this season, and they don't seem to turn up. They lost to Gateshead away, a huge game at that point in the season. They then lost to York City away from home as well, another big game. So when they're playing sides around them, particularly away from home, they seem to struggle. And that's where I feel Barnet's downfall may come this season, and why I don't think they're going to be involved in the title race, where the other 2 above them have managed to pick out results when they've needed to against the better sides. Second place, I've got Forest Green. You mentioned there about them being a little bit too light in defence, with numbers. Something I will say about Forest Green is they've not been scared to spend money in the summer. And I think it's something that they'd be prepared to do if injuries and suspensions come in. So I'm not too concerned about that. And I look at Forest Green's squad on paper overall. I think it's a very strong squad. They've got a lot of individuals in that side that should be playing, could, I reckon, hold their own at League One level, to be honest. But I look at the side that I've got to finish top at the moment in York City. And so I've only had 1 defeat in 16 games, which actually came at home for me, just speaks volumes about how far this York side has come on compared to previous years. You look at York last season, they survived by 2 points. They're now top of the table. And I genuinely feel that they could win the league this season. You've spoke about Hinchelwood and how good he is going forward to get the best out of the forward line, and that's something they've certainly done so far. But most sides, when they can score a lot of goals, often concede a fair few. York have got the best defence in the league. They've only conceded 9 goals after 16 games. And for me, I look at York so far and the way they're going, I genuinely feel that they can win this title. They've managed to pick results out of the bag when they've needed to. Beating Barnet, a big win against them. Then going to Halifax, which is a very difficult place to go, particularly for sides that are doing well in the league. And they've gone in after quite a poor performance, I think, from York. Have gone to the Shea and actually picked all 3 points up by scoring 2 late goals. That's a side for me that goes on to win the title. I couldn't imagine Barnet coming to our place, us being 1-0 up, and Barnet coming back and scoring 2 late goals. And that's the difference. And that's why, for me, overall, I feel York will win the title. Any questions on that? Have you got anything to say on my top 3 at all? Or
to be fair, I see exactly where you're coming from with Barnet. That they do have a squad of a few injury-prone players, albeit quite deep in depth, the squad. But there's quality in the likes of Nick Tavares, Reece Brown. the likes of them, they're very high quality players, but the only thing maybe that prevented them from taking a step up a level at times have been their injury problems. I do agree with what you say with Barnet. But one thing I do think might come in or work in their favour is Dean Brennan's adaptability. I think you've seen countless times during his tenure at Barnet, he's never afraid to switch up the system, switch up personnel. There was a time where they was conceding 3 or 4 goals a game at one point, and to score 4 or 5 goals to win a match. They adapted to this 3 at the back system and, shored up the back line, played that 2-man pivot in front, and it's worked really well in their favour. I think he's up there, one of the best managers at this level, Brennan. So yeah, I can't really, but I really can't fault what you say about Barnet. It's not something I'd be surprised to see if it was the case. And on what you said at York as well, I don't want to remind you about the Halifax game, but yeah, no, that result, it's kind of the staple of the season for them. With that's the making of champions, really. I think for a team to turn up, play, especially in a derby as well, play pretty poorly, if I'm honest, and then still pick up 3 points, especially in such dramatic fashion. That's the making of a title winner. That's kind of, the eye opener for a lot of people that York really aren't here to mess around this season. I think people expected it with at the start of the season that they might be up there and in about the playoffs. After signing the likes of Ollie Pearce, it doesn't go unnoticed. Joe Felix, but I think some people, I like to say I'm quite proud of myself for suggesting that they'll probably be up around the top end of the table. Because I thought Hinchell would, like I said, sound like a broken record. I think he was that final piece of the puzzle. But no, yeah, I just I don't see teams breaking that side down. They're so well structured. They're so well drilled in the way they play. Like you said, they score as many goals as they do whilst barely conceding any. If it's not going their way up front, you've got the likes of Lionel John Lewis to come off the bench, and he saved them. They don't look beatable really at the moment, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. At our place, it did genuinely feel like we had them. We probably could have scored another couple of goals, but we didn't. And for them to go and score 2 late goals like that, I don't think I've seen a side do that against Halifax for a long time. And I think that is the making of champions. So finally then, just reading out our top 7, who are going to finish inside the playoffs and of course go on to win the title side. I've got Solihull Moors in 7th place for me. I think Yeovil will slip out and Solihull will come in. I do believe Yeovil will slip a bit further down, more into the mid-table positions. Then I've actually got Gateshead actually in 6th place. Like a lot of the points you made there about them with the new manager, and you look at the results that they're getting recently, they're not particularly smashing teams like they are. Do you know you can only beat what's in front of you, and a win's a win. It don't matter if you win 5-0 or 1-0, you still get the 3 points. But for me, I think overall, when it comes down to it, in the next few weeks, I genuinely feel Gateshead are a little bit weaker now than what they were under Rob Elliott. So I think they're going to slip down slightly, particularly as well, because I think the sides below them are going to become stronger. Then I've got Rochdale in 5th place, a very good side, I thought, against Halifax, beat us. And I've seen them throughout the season. They look particularly strong. Play quite a niche style of football as well. Score a fair amount of goals. I think if there were a side for me that I think sides should probably look at the moment for being quite good entertainers, I'd look at Rochdale for the style of football they play with the likes of Ali Rakia going forward. You also, you look at the experience that they've got as well in Henderson, Cairo Mitchell's got, of course, scoring. And you've even got to think Devante Rodney's out injured at the moment. When he comes back, he'll add something to them as well. And then in 5th place, I've actually got, 4th place, I should say. I've actually got, it's between 2. I've either got Barnet or Oldham. I'm actually going to go for Barnet in 4th place. And I think Oldham will get 3rd. I think Oldham are a side for me that are going to get stronger and stronger as the season goes on. I think they're still to make more additions. And when they do that, I think they can really push on. And I don't think they're going to have enough to be in the title race, but I don't think it's out of the question at the moment. And then, as I previously mentioned, Forest Green 2nd and then York City to win the league. What's your top 7 then?
So I've gone Gateshead 7th. I think like you said, Magne in now. I think they're just kind of grinding out results. I think it will see them out just to make that playoff spot. In sixth, I've gone with Rochdale as well. I think they've got enough in them to get that playoff spot. I think like I said, the significant side of play they've got. I think they can go out to control a game of football and dominate a team. I think that always works in your favour when you've got a bit of a hold on the game. I think it makes it less likely to lose a match, and the more comfortable you are on the pitch, realistically, the more likely you are to win. It's as simple as that. And I think they go out and play a style of football that suits that perfectly. Fifth, I've gone for Oldham. As I mentioned, I do really think I describe them a bit as a ticking time bomb, if I'm honest. I think there's an implosion there, a bit of a run of bad form that might see them maybe just pull away from that top four. But again, if they were to go and climb into that top four, top three, I really wouldn't be surprised. I've actually gone for Solihull in fourth. I said they were climbing up the table, and Andy Wing was backed massively in the summer to bring in the likes of Tunnicliffe and Bostock. Retain the likes of Osborne and Tavon Campbell. Obviously Sabara left in the summer, but he was out for a large spell last season. I think they learned to play without him during last season. So I don't think they actually lost many major names. I think they only got stronger in the summer. And climbing the table the way they are now with players coming back and fitness in the squad building, I think they'll only get better and better. And I expect them to be maybe push for the title before the season started, so I can definitely see them finishing fourth. And then for me, as I mentioned already, Forest Green third, Barnet second, and York to win the league.
Fair enough then. Well, Sam, thank you very much for coming on once again to kind of review the first third or so of the season so far. To everyone's, of course, watching the podcast, if you've not subscribed, please do so. We'll have every single Thursday previewing all the National League fixtures. Also, drop the podcast a like, and we will see you next time. Bye for now.